For 30 years, the Center for Mindfulness at the University of Massachusetts Medical School has been an innovative leader in mind-body medicine, refining the practice, teaching, and scientific understanding of mindfulness as it works to bring mindfulness into the mainstream of medicine, healthcare, and society. Maintaining a vibrant local presence in Worcester, Massachusetts, the Center for Mindfulness offers programs and services through 6 key pathways, helping people cultivate a sense of well-being, confidence, and creativity. The 6 key pathways of the center are patient care, academic and professional education, research, the annual International Scientific Conference, mindfulness and education programs for students and teachers, and corporate leadership programs and initiatives. Mindfulness is a way of being, a basic human quality of awareness that is cultivated by learning to pay wise attention to whatever is happening in our lives. People who participate in a mindfulness-based stress reduction program learn through their own experience how to take better care of themselves by understanding the interplay of mind and body, allowing for greater access to inner resources for coping, growing, and healing. Mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR, is an approach that combines meditation, dialogue, reflective inquiry, and mindful yoga and movement as means of assisting participants to work more effectively with stress, pain, and illness, as well as the challenges of life in the 21st century.
Last night I did yoga right before I went to bed. And the relaxation of it, and my thoughts go off and I bring them back, my thoughts go off and I bring them back. They just go off all the time,
Sure,
like, you know. Just go off and bring them back. And I think about work and I think about my anxiety. My anxiety just does tend to quieten a bit as I go through these exercises. And I go to bed at night so grateful for this quietness because I want to slow down. But I didn't know how.
I feel myself getting tense or whatever, and I just stopped.
Yes.
Breathe, you know, and then I observed, like, you know, that whole STOP thing there, and then I just said, I'm gonna be late, so what?
So what?
Deal with it, you know, and I'm usually, you know, I'm definitely A and I gotta be there, you know.
So what did you notice at that point?
I was relaxed. I mean, I wasn't tense anymore. I was just, I took a big deep breath and just, okay, so I'm gonna be late. Big deal.
MBSR is based on a form of meditation originally out of the Buddhist tradition, having to do with this capacity to pay attention and to actually refine our capacity to pay attention.
Mindfulness is like a deeply embodied experience of wakefulness, and we call that, in common parlance, awareness. And we only are alive in one moment, and that's this one, now.
Using this capacity that I believe everyone has for being mindful, being attentive in the present moment in this way, to base a training program for people who are suffering on that capacity to be mindful. I think that's what MBSR is.
It's a deep engagement with the vitality of the moment and the appreciation of life. And all of this is done both alone and as a group, so that it has the sense of the community learning to it.
In the MBSR classes, we get a whole bunch of people together and people begin to talk about like what's really going on. And there's a great relief because like people realize like I'm not alone with my anxiety or my depression or feeling overwhelmed or you know, the whole plethora of our human condition. And so I think there's a breath of fresh air of people really wanting to have like a meaningful encounter with another human being. And I think there's a hunger to connect, to be real, to be loved, to be seen, to be understood, to be respected for where you are, to honor, to be honored.
It's also utilizing the latest in neuroscience discoveries about something called neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is essentially this idea that the brain can be shaped by our experience. So MBSR is also, because it's repetitive, because people practice when they're in class. They practice the meditation methods when they're at home. They practice them in their everyday lives, is that there's a kind of mental muscle being built, if you will, that has real life implications in terms of you might actually handle situations in your life differently. The things that used to stress you out might not stress you in the same way.
Stress is the word that John used in '79 when he was coming up with the Course. It was his word for the Buddhist term dukkha, which means suffering, but it means that quality of things just not being right. And it's a great word to use for what we're doing. We're reducing the effects that stress might have on the body, but really what we're reducing is the way that people get lost in their pain and suffering and forget that there is this inherent capacity to come back to balance and ease in our lives. And the program actually accompanies people on a journey through discovering that. So to me, that's what the MBSR program is, the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Program, Mindfulness-Based Suffering Reduction Program.
I started talking to physicians at UMass, asking them questions like, well, of all your patients, what percentage of them would you say you help? And again, remember, this is now 1979. And I was completely astonished by their responses. They said, well, maybe 20%, 15%. And I said, well, what happens to the others? They said, well, some get better on their own, and the rest. But what if you sent your patients to a place where, like, we could take that time and help them to tap into deep inner resources that they have simply by virtue of being human? So I wrote out a 4 or 5 page proposal, and I directed it to the ambulatory care department in the hospital. And I said, I'll do this 2 days a week for virtually no money. I mean, you know, just like pittance. And they said yes to it. We'll try it. And of course, we had to decide, well, what would we call this? Well, in 1979, you weren't going to call it the Mind-Body Clinic. You weren't going to call it alternative medicine. Why don't we just call it stress reduction? Anybody can relate to that. Everybody can relate to that. Let's make the mouth of the funnel as big as possible and bring people into the system. Because most of the people who will be referred to the stress reduction clinic, they are falling through the cracks of the healthcare system.
I came as an intern. I was the first intern in the stress reduction clinic in 1981.
I started in 1984 when there was just John and Saki. It was very informal. John used to test the air quality in the hospital just to see if you could breathe, because we were in the basement over the animal lab.
The first 10 or 12 years, we were a pretty well-kept secret. We had no windows. I'd come in the morning and I wouldn't know if it was sunny out or snowing out.
The rooms were small, dark. We were in the faculty conference room. We'd go through the library. We had to look very professional because no one knew who we were. And it was wonderful.
I'm lying on the floor of the faculty conference room in like the first cycle, I think, or the second cycle, and I'm halfway through the body scan, and then the door opens, and there are 30 people on the floor, and this troop of people in white coats walk in, and the guy in front, he comes up to me, and he looks down at me, and he looks around, and he says, "What's going on here?" This is in 1980. And I say, well, this is the first, this is the new stress reduction program in the hospital. He's this guy barefoot and karate gi, and all these people like lying on these colorful mats, and he's got a retinue of people, and he said, well, we have this room reserved for this time. And I said, that's funny. I thought I made sure that we had it. I double-checked, I triple-checked, you know. And so he looks around and he says to me, are these our patients? And I said, yes, they are. And he said, then we will find another place to hold our meeting.
Scientific research has always been the cornerstone of the work of the Stress Reduction Clinic and the Center for Mindfulness. It is through rigorous clinical and basic science research that MBSR and other mindfulness-based interventions have been shown to be effective and useful to people from all walks of life.
We would assess people before on various measures and then assess them afterwards. The research then went to a much higher level of randomized clinical trials to try to really discern in a much more stringent way what was going on with these people, say at the level of the biology, at the level of brain function, at the level of the immune system.
We wouldn't be here 30 years later if it wasn't for the science, because you wouldn't have anything to talk about. You could just say, well, people think it's a good idea and they like it.
One of the first randomized trials to test the potential efficacy of mindfulness meditation was conducted in a study on psoriasis patients at UMass. While all the patients in the study were treated with the standard ultraviolet phototherapy, those in the experimental group were instructed to listen to guided mindfulness meditation tapes while undergoing treatment.
The group that was randomized to stress reduction were more successful in seeing the decrease in the psoriasis than the group that was not.
To tell you the truth, I didn't believe it. It was too phenomenal a result. For people who are meditating between 30 seconds and 10 minutes, 3 times a week for 4 months. They're not allowed to take tapes home and practice with them at home like in MBSR or anything like that. So it seems like, wow, this is affecting a healing process.
Another one was a study that we collaborated with Dr. Richard Davidson and his colleagues at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and that was on a worksite study where we randomized a workforce into an experimental group who took the 8-week MBSR program in a control group who did not take it.
We actually did it with not the traditional MBSR clientele, but rather with a group of highly stressed employees at a high-tech corporation in Madison. The study demonstrated that MBSR, compared to a control condition, did indeed change brain function in specific ways over the course of 8 weeks.
We tested them with a flu vaccine and measured their antibody responses over the course of many weeks following the course.
And what we found is that the participants in the MBSR group showed a significant boost in their response to the vaccine compared to the control group. And the amount that their brain changed actually predicted how much the vaccine was effective. So this was really a landmark study in many ways, and really I think the beginning of the era of modern research on meditation.
In 1990, Jon Kabat-Zinn published Full Catastrophe Living. It was the first book to outline the MBSR program and serve as a guide to mindfulness for people with a wide range of medical conditions, and just as importantly, for people throughout the broader society. The book quickly became a bestseller and has had a powerful impact on both medical professionals and patients.
Full Catastrophe Living was the first attempt to really put out there what the heart of the program was, what the relationship to the practice was, and in a way that would be commonsensical to regular people, just like the people that were being referred to our program.
Starting in 1992, the Stress Reduction Clinic developed an MBSR program specifically for inner-city residents of Worcester, Massachusetts. Initially funded by a 2-year grant from the Nathan Cummings Foundation, this program was free of charge and provided classes in Spanish as well as in English to the disadvantaged and underserved people of this vibrant community. After the initial grant funding ended, the center supported the program for an additional 5 years through general program revenues.
I have 2 classes with 30 people in each one in English and one in Spanish, from the inner city. And people came from Salvation Army, from the Center for Abused Women in Transition, and from the 3 community health centers here in Worcester.
We felt like we weren't serving as well as we could have that population of people in the main clinic, which was in a large tertiary care hospital. And we began to realize that there were a lot of barriers to them actually coming to the main clinic. One of them happened to be transportation. The other one happened to be childcare.
Because when you give a person that has been suffering for many years a space of tranquility, of safety, on exploring what means to be alive, what means to be human, allowing them to breathe and move within themselves, something started to happen.
In parallel, we began working in the Massachusetts prisons. We were, all in all, we saw about 1,400 prisoners in Massachusetts over the course of 4 years.
Under the direction of George Mumford and with support from the Massachusetts Committee on Criminal Justice, teams of teachers from the clinic delivered the MBSR program to more than 1,400 inmates, corrections staff, and officials of 7 prisons across the state.
We would see reductions in hostility, for instance, in prison, which is just about the most hostile place on earth.
By 1993, the Bill Moyers special, Healing in the Mind, came out, and I believe 40 million Americans, or 40 million people saw that. And that changed things a lot.
Head and neck balanced on the shoulders, allowing the eyes to close and just tuning into the breath. And a sense of your body as a whole, just sitting here.
How do your patients, your new patients, react when you mention to them the word and the idea of meditation?
Well, we had no idea, and this had never been tried before in a medical center, whether people, mainstream Americans, this is not Berkeley, would go for a clinic, the foundation of which was intensive training in meditative disciplines. They are being sent by their doctors for all sorts of very real problems, and they're not at all interested in yoga or swamis or gurus or Zen masters or enlightenment. They're suffering, and they are coming because they want some relief from their suffering. And you watch the sensations come and go, and very often they will change. Noticing that you can uncouple the sensations from your thoughts about them. And like, this is killing me, it's going to last forever, there's nothing I'll be able to do about it. You learn to free yourself from those thoughts and realize those are just thoughts. And then it turns out there's inner stillness and peace right within some of the most difficult life situations.
Can you ride on the waves of it? You know what I mean? Float with it. See if you can stay with the breath and just let the pain do whatever it does. Stay on top of it by floating on the breath.
We got a lot of telephone calls from both physicians and patients with serious, horrific AIDS, bone cancer, all sorts of things. And they would say, I don't know what it was that I saw on TV, but whatever it is, I want it. And so that was one certain quantum leap in, you know, the sort of secret was out, you know, the cat was out of the bag. And I talked to the president of the University of Massachusetts, Michael Hooker, because he saw the Moyers program, and he said, what do you want? What could we do together?
In 1995, the need for an overarching organization structured to sustain and further the expansion of the center's work became apparent. With the support of the UMass Medical Center, the Fetzer Institute, and the Nathan Cummings Foundation, the Center for Mindfulness in Medicine, Healthcare, and Society was founded by Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn.
I'm not sure, well, I know I wouldn't be doing what I've been doing with mindfulness without the Center for Mindfulness. That's very clear.
And it has been the leader from very early on. It has really been an inspiring example.
It's basically the place where it has all started, and it's like the metaphor would be like it's a wellspring.
MBSR and what the Center for Mindfulness have done have been, I mean, it's beyond the kind of scope of even what's talked about here. I mean, I'll tell you from my personal experience, it's changed the way that my research works.
OASIS is our Institute for Mindfulness-Based Professional Education and Innovation. My vision of Oasis is of a verdant evolutionary school, a school that honors the depth of contemplative practice, the rigor of contemporary science, and the enduring capacity we each carry within us for manifesting kindness, compassion, and wisdom in our livelihoods and lives, and in the service of those we care for and serve.
We train people all over the world in mindfulness-based stress reduction. We have a number of different trainings that we offer, and that's all through Oasis.
We find that people come from all different kinds of professional backgrounds. And so the meeting of modern science, modern theories of psychology, and these really ancient techniques for being with the way things are in the body and mind all come together. And so people are attracted from all those different places, all those different angles.
My patients are looking for a way to change, and in order to change, they need to find out what their reality is. And I see this as a wonderful tool to learn how to do that.
The motto of the American Society of Anesthesiology is vigilance. That's on the seal. And it would seem that there should be a reasonable connection between being mindful, for example, during a long, complex surgery, or maybe during a simple, boring surgery, and remaining mindful and therefore remaining vigilant.
We've integrated mindfulness into all our treatment programs, and found it to be very beneficial as a platform for the wellness, which includes exercise and nutrition. But it also, not only as part of an overall wellness, but it does seem to help their self-efficacy and how they feel about themselves, and more of a sense of empowerment, which is important in their recovery process.
But of course, in the hospital setting, they also have a lot of fear, and there's so many barriers to good communication. And I feel as though, again, my ability to be present helps put the patient at ease, and they seem to be much more receptive, and I feel as though the quality of the communication is there.
Insofar as I can be a role model and just help set the tone, it really changes the entire dynamic, and the place runs better and people get better care. And so, taking advantage of mindfulness and just letting it percolate out and find those moments with some of the other staff has been as rewarding as trying to bring it to each patient encounter or just my own sanity.